Hey everyone, Greg here with Science Studio. There's been a lot of talk in the tech sphere side of the internet in regards to the ability to overclock non-K, yeah that's right, non-K Intel Skylake CPUs. For instance, the Intel 6400, 6500, and 6600 are all non-K variants of the 6600K, but are significantly cheaper than the latter. And while Intel doesn't normally offer any unlocked version of their i3 processors anyway, we still would like to see the potential that the i3 offers when overclocked to, let's say, 4.3 or 4.4 gigahertz. There have been reviews out already claiming that the i3 6100 was able to reach 4.7 gigahertz, which is crazy, and honestly I don't know if that was on air or on water, but in this case, since we only have a Cooler Master Hyper T4 with us in our i3 rig, we're just going to stick with air and see how far we can get it. And all of that will be shown in this video, so stay tuned for that. One important thing to note about this overclocking guide that this video will likely become is that this is going to be for a specific set of people. Now, what do I mean by that? As of the recording date of this video, I believe it's the 16th of December, only people who have ASRock Z170 motherboards will be able to take advantage of this overclocking guide. Now pay attention to this part, especially if you're not familiar with overclocking. When you are overclocking or, for whatever reason, underclocking, there are two, parameters to take note of. The first is the base clock. The base clock is just a number, really, just between typically 100 and 150. And also the multiplier, also just a number, but it's typically much lower than the base clock number. So when it comes to calculating the frequency at which your CPU will operate under optimal load, simply multiply the base clock value by your multiplier. So in the case of the i3 6100, the base clock is typically, I believe almost in all cases, really, typically at 100, and the multiplier is 37. So when you multiply it 100 times 37, that gives you a value of 3700. This is 3700 megahertz or 3.7 gigahertz, and this is the rated stock value of the i3 6100 frequency. In most cases, when overclocking any unlocked CPU, the multiplier is the one that typically changes. The multiplier doesn't affect anything else on the motherboard or anywhere else in the system other than the CPU frequency. But in the case of this overclock, the BIOS update that I'll talk about in a second that goes along with the Z170 ASRock Pro 4 board that we have will only allow us to change the base clock value of our CPU. This could have some unknown consequences. The base clock value is known to kind of change frequencies a bit with our RAM, and if you saw our RAM overclocking video, you know that having set values for your RAM frequency is very important, especially when it comes to gaming and rendering and things of that sort. But overclocking RAM is tricky, and if you don't mess with voltages too much, you can lead to system crashes and having to reset your CMOS, a bunch of things that are just, quite frankly, unwanted and large wastes of time. So with that, I am going to say this. Do this at your own risk. Make sure that what you do to your CPU and to your memory, as a result, in your BIOS is sound and makes sense. Don't overclock your CPU to like 5 gigahertz and then restart your system and expect it to boot up. I mean, that's crazy, especially through not changing any voltage values. There are plenty of guides on YouTube and just online in general in regards to overclocking a CPU appropriately. So if you're not familiar with a gradual increase in voltage as you increase your multiplier or base clock, then kind of stay away from this video for now and read up on those things first. We will have a video up on Science Studio's YouTube page shortly about how to properly overclock a CPU. But until then, make sure you do your research before you do this. We're only making this video right now because the Intel was kind of released for the Intel processors only a few days ago. So this is very new, this is very experimental. In fact, the BIOS that we're going to install onto our Pro 4 board is only in the beta stage. So we're taking actually quite a big risk here with updating a BIOS. And as you know, I personally don't like updating BIOSes in general, especially if the computer's already running stable. So keep all those things in mind before you actually go into doing what we're about to do.
So the first thing we're going to do is our research, and if you follow along with us, you'll quickly find that tomsoftware.com has a pretty excellent article on how to overclock. It lists all of the, compatible motherboards here in this list, and then tells you which BIOS update you'll need for that particular motherboard. So as we selected ours, we found these were pretty much the regular BIOS updates, but then we hopped over to the beta tab and found two possible beta updates. The one that we want, of course, is going to be the flash ready BIOS update, simply because all we'll have to do is drag that onto a thumb drive and then let our BIOS do the rest. Select the BIOS corresponding to your motherboard and then download it to the root of your USB drive that you'll use to boot from in the following step. Once the ROM saves onto your USB thumb drive, go ahead and eject it appropriately. Don't just pull the thing out, but eject it appropriately to ensure that the data you just transfers successfully and kind of sticks. Trust me, you don't want a bad BIOS ROM. That would be catastrophic. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and plug in our USB thumb drive into the computer with our ASRock Pro 4 LGA 1151 motherboard. Hopefully this works. I have no idea. Cross my fingers. So for ASRock motherboards, I believe how to get into the BIOS is just F2. So yeah, should hear a little beep if you have a speaker in there. Okay, so we are in the BIOS. I haven't reset my RAM speed, so it's actually still at 2133. But I believe this is where we're supposed to go, instant flash. So that was what it said on the ASRock motherboard website that we downloaded the instant flash ROM. So let's see what it's going to do. Okay, so it's going to scan through and it's going to say, well, you've got a couple ROMs here. So, right, exactly. So if you didn't notice before, what we did was we put the extracted folder in there, we put the non-extracted folder in there, and then just the plain old ROM in the USB thumb drive, just in case, because I wasn't sure which one the BIOS would prefer. So I'm probably just going to go with the regular stock, not stock, but I'm probably just going to go with the regular ROM that's not in a zip file. So that would be this one. 2.83 is the BIOS update that will allow us to overclock. So that's the one that we're going to do. Hopefully this works. Let's see how it goes. Okay, so it turned off. Like I said, I have no idea what this is supposed to do. I don't like updating BIOSes, so it's doing its own thing. Is it going to boot? Oh, okay. Alright, so it's flashing right now. This is important. You don't want your computer to turn off while this is updating. So if we were to have a sudden power outage right now, I would be SOL. Not even kidding. And once your BIOS becomes corrupted, your whole motherboard is fried and becomes just a large paperweight. So you really, really want this to finish. Don't touch anything. Let it do its thing. I don't know what that is. But yeah, just make sure, if you have a UPS or something like a power supply that will keep your computer running in the event of a power outage, that's even better. Just make sure that when you're doing it, there's not like a storm outside, or make sure that you have reliable power. So all this stuff is important. You don't want to cut off any of this. It's updating the UEFI right now. That's super, super important. That's like our whole BIOS. So don't touch anything. Like I said, let this do its thing. If this cuts off at any point while this is filming, like I said, I'm SOL. So, do this at your own risk. This is sensitive stuff. I get so antsy when it comes to updating BIOSes. I do not like this. I don't like leaving the fate of my computer in the hands of my local power company. I'll speed this up, by the way. Right now, I'll go ahead and fast forward, and then if anything happens, I'll slow it down for you. Okay, so I'm slowing it back down for you guys just to see it's actually speeding up the closer we get to 100%. So I'll probably just let the rest of this go out just so you can get an idea of how long it should take for your BIOS to update, so you don't have to worry or anything like that. Even though I am still worrying because it's not finished yet. It's scaring me. Okay, so it cut off before it hit 100%. That's not cool. Even if it was finished, that's still
is uncool. Whew. And should get a post, I'm hoping. See, this is the stuff, right? Jesus, see, I don't like this. Ugh, that is scary. Okay, so it looks like it might be booting into the OS now, which would mean, I assume, that the BIOS is updated successfully. Yep, okay, so we're into the operating system, so that, for the most part, means that the BIOS updated successfully. That was very scary, but I wanted to show you the whole process of updating a BIOS. Just have a backup. I don't believe there's any way to back up your previous BIOS. If there is, in your particular BIOS for whatever motherboard you have, definitely take advantage of that. But what I did, just in case we happen to have a BIOS update failure, I had another 2.8 BIOS update, which was just a regular non-beta BIOS that I would have updated if that one had failed. And the most important thing about failing BIOSes is that if the BIOS does fail to update, do not turn off your computer, because then you're not going to be able to boot into your regular cycle, because your motherboard has no idea what is loaded onto the CMOS. So yeah, just make sure that you have some backups. That's pretty much the rule of thumb here. Now, what I did while we were on the desktop was make sure that all my programs worked correctly. I know the BIOS really doesn't have much to do with how the operating system actually operates, but I did want to make sure that there were no stability issues with that update, being that it's a beta BIOS, and you know, I'm just not sure how everything's going to communicate with the new update. So that's what I was doing in between these film cuts. So yeah, all right, so it's restarted. You know, get that F2 going. Should hear the beep. You know, if you have a speaker, I recommend getting a speaker. Just turn off the part where it beeps when you start up. Wow. Okay. So, right. Okay. So this is completely different than the older BIOS that we were sporting. Yeah, I guess we're just gonna have to figure this out as we go. I thought this would be similar to what we were looking at before. So, all right. That being said, it does look like they did a pretty good job with changing everything and making it look more. I mean, all the system information you would ever want to see, I presume, would be on this home page here for the BIOS. So that's nice. So fan status, that's a pretty big thing. You can change, I believe, here the I don't know, fan speed. So let's see if we can do that. Performance. Okay, so that's going to speed up the fans. So you can see our RPMs are increasing naturally. Now they're getting even higher than that. I don't know why that one's whacked out. Sometimes it hits like 20,000 RPM, but of course that's not really the case. So I believe advanced mode is where we're supposed to go. That was the same thing with ASUS. Yes, I do want to switch to advanced mode. I just clicked it. I don't know if, oh, okay. All right. Okay, well, so that looks much better. This is what we're familiar with. So first thing we're going to want to do, go over here, overclock tweaker, and then a CPU configuration is likely where we're going to have to go. Did we just get a freeze? Yeah, okay, so it looks like our BIOS just froze on us. That kind of sucks. It did this actually, I should admit, it did this with the original BIOS that we had that looked just like this. So, you know, it's a BIOS. That's why I hate updating them, because it really, these things never get fixed. But I guess if it freezes, let's see if we can, okay, just Control-Alt-Delete it, reset the thing, and let's try again, see if it works. Yeah, that really sucked. Let's see. Let's try this one more time. Okay, I'm gonna try to be more fluid this time, to try to be quicker. Maybe it was just a timing thing. So, okay, CPU, boom. So it looks like we can change our Wow, okay. Okay, so this is our base clock. Basically, that's what B clock stands for. Didn't know that before. Okay, so B clock is base clock frequency. So that's what we can change, and that's presumably what this update was all about. This beta release by ASRock for these Z170 boards that they have on the market now. So this is what we're going to use to change our CPU frequency. So obviously, if you're wanting to overclock, you're going to want to disable this. Well, this is spread spectrum. This is the one that you're going to want to do. Okay, so let's just do 100 and let's see, should stay the same. Okay, so let's do 105. Now what you should notice up here is that our frequency is going to change because we've increased our base clock. So yeah, alright, so right now if we decided to boot into our operating system with just changing this base clock frequency to 105, our target CPU speed is going to be 3885 megahertz, which is, I mean, that's good. That means that we actually can overclock our locked Intel i3 Skylake CPU. So that's pretty awesome. I'm gonna see, I don't want to mess with voltages. I really don't know if we can even mess with voltages. That might be why the limit for a lot of the articles I was reading about in regards to this could only get about 4.6 because 4.6 gigahertz. That's likely because they couldn't increase the voltage any more than that. May have been just because of temps, I don't know. But we'll find that out here. That's what I want to do. That's the point of this video. So okay, let's just leave it there. So it's at 4 gigahertz, 4.1 almost. And then what we're going to do is go ahead and save this configuration and hope that it sticks, and hope that our system is actually stable when we do that. If not, and we cease to be able to enter our BIOS, we are probably going to have to reset a CMOS and then reconfigure everything. So overclocking it takes a lot of trial and error, and the errors can be pretty substantial. So I'm gonna go ahead and let this thing just boot all the way through, make sure that it actually functions.
And okay, so what I did was move this computer. This was the one that we did the whole BIOS update on. Moved it to kind of a workstation in the back of the house. Went ahead and wired it up via Ethernet cable, and then I found out that my Wi-Fi router came in, so I went ahead and plugged it and set that all up. And what I want to do is show you the core temperatures and the core clock speed of our supposedly overclocked i3 6100. So we'll pull up CPU ID, and yep, there we have it. Our Intel i3 6100, of course, is overclocked. Our core speed right there is 4070 megahertz, which is exactly what we expected it to be. So that means that our overclock is sticking, and so I think, yeah, what actually I went and did was I went ahead and reloaded software entirely, and basically wiped the slate clean and verified thereafter that the overclock actually stuck through the entire OS wipe process. So restoring an OS doesn't affect the overclock in the BIOS. So that might be normal, I'm not sure, but that is pretty cool. So there you have it. You can in fact overclock an i3 6100, basically any locked non-K Intel Skylake processor. In this case, we were successfully able to overclock the Core i3. Now, I'm not going to overclock any higher than this, particularly because of the temps. This is what's scary here. I'm going to use Hardware Monitor. For some reason, I cannot find my CPU temperature anywhere. It's not just in this app, actually, either. See, I can't find it. I mean, the CPU TN, but that's not the same. It's not the actual temperature of the CPU. It should be around here somewhere, but the temperature gauge is not loading. Of course, we have temperatures for everything else, but not for the CPU. So what I tried to do was use a different program. I went in here and used RealTemp, which is, I guess, just another application that I found online. And what it's telling me is that my CPU temps are 100 degrees Celsius, which is obviously not the case. So, yeah, that's not true. I mean, I'm sitting right above the computer. It's not hot at all. It's not pushing out any heat, really. It's idle anyway. So I know that's not correct. And I think what may have happened was the BIOS update may have, I don't know, maybe messed up a couple of sensors. Not too sure, but you know, if that's a big deal to you, you know, maybe stay away from this for that reason in particular. Maybe a few threads of code got messed up, but your ability to monitor the CPU temperatures in this case are going to be hindered. I will continue investigating that, but like I said, you can overclock an i3 6100, and there's proof in the pudding right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and run one more test. I'm going to install, yeah, I have to install it, Geekbench, and we'll see how that performs, and we'll compare the scores we had on Geekbench before the overclock with the scores that we're going to have now with the overclock. So we'll go ahead and install that very quick here, boom, and then let's go ahead and run it. So there should be a bit of a CPU performance increase. Let's see how it goes. I'll go ahead and run it just in real time and let you guys see the whole process. If you want, go ahead and fast forward through this set. Oh, by the way, I know it says 3.3 gigahertz there, but that's not the case. I really don't know why Geekbench is saying that, but it's not at 3.3 gigahertz. Okay, so it looks like it's going to take around 1 minute and 15 seconds, and our score, wow, single core score 4122, and our multi-core score is 8808. That is pretty awesome. That's definitely higher than our previous single core score and our multi-core score, I believe. Well, let's go ahead and put up the old scores. Yeah. So there is an increase, 4122 versus 3886, and 8808 versus 8217. It's pretty awesome. There are benefits to reap in this case. I believe that this was overclocked to what the other websites were claiming they were able to get theirs to, 4.5, 4.6 gigahertz. I do believe that this i3 will approach i5 territory. That is pretty awesome. So basically, I guess the rule of thumb here is you don't have to purchase a K processor to take advantage of the excellent performance of an Intel K processor.
So I went ahead and turned the phone around real quick. I just want to end by saying this. I appreciate your patience. Please do this at your own risk. This is new. This is in beta phase. I mean, everything about this is in beta phase. It works for me, but it might not work for you. Make sure that you do, if you decide to pursue this, have ASRock Z170, an ASRock Z170 chipset for your motherboard, and make sure that you don't overclock like chaotically. Don't go to like 5 or 5.5 gigahertz. That's insane. I don't know of any processor other than maybe like the 8350 that would reach that on air. So keep all that in mind. Do that at your own risk, but have fun, experiment, do it safely, and you should see results like mine that we've seen here. So that's about it, guys. Leave a thumbs up if you thought this video was pretty cool. Leave a thumbs down if you thought well, that's like a thumb sideways. Leave a thumbs down if you didn't think we did too well. Let us know what we can do to improve our videos. As always, leave comments, leave questions. We will respond to all of them. So thanks for your devotion to us, guys. We appreciate the community that's kind of forming around this. It's pretty awesome, and it's because of you guys that we're able to do all this stuff. So yeah, without further ado, this is Science Studio. Thanks for learning with us.